Okay, let's talk about. I'll just preface it by saying, there's a gun debate right now. Obama wants more gun control. How does all this debate affect you, and do you see a solution to the problem?
Okay. Great question. The gun debate that's going on is actually pretty much being driven by the East Coast, West Coast arguments. And as I see it, my opinion is that more gun laws really don't or aren't going to have a huge effect. The problem that you've got is that laws are aimed at regulating and modifying the behavior of the law-abiding. And someone that is a felon or has been judged to be mentally defective can't have a gun anyway. They're in violation of federal law if they do have a gun.
Oh, Susie wants to come in. Yeah, send her in. Come on in, Susie. She wanted to sit down.
You can.
Yeah, I'll edit. As I said, I've got like, and we don't use tape anymore. We use these little cards, and they last like 3 hours. So.
Hi there.
Hey, Susie.
Hi, Marcus.
Good morning.
How are you?
We're just started. I just asked him his first question.
Oh, will I make you nervous if I sit and watch?
Not at all.
Okay.
Okay. And what I was just asking him was, just so you know, as I said, there's the gun debate going on about how Obama wants more gun control laws, and my first question for him was, how does this debate affect you, and is there a solution to this problem?
And the problem with more laws, the laws are aimed at modifying the behavior of the law-abiding, and the people that are going to abide by the laws will, most of us, 99% of us, are going to follow those laws and do what we're told to do. The problem is that the people that are not law-abiding, the felons, the folks that are not supposed to have weapons anyway and already have weapons, are already breaking federal law. We don't need more laws. We've got laws that should put those folks back in jail if they're found to have a weapon. And I think my example is, if we have, let's just say for argument's sake, there are 2,000 people that are felons that live in Columbia, Missouri. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but let's just use that as an example. And a fourth of those folks have weapons. We have a gun ban on a particular category of weapons. How many of us really believe that 500 people that have illegal weapons already are going to line up to surrender their arms? My guess is that the only ones that are going to be in that line are going to be us law-abiding folks who are trying to do the right thing and follow the law. The folks that are already breaking the law are not apt to line up and surrender weapons. So the result is that you end up with a bunch of people that have firearms that they're not supposed to have, and a bunch of people that have no way of defending themselves.
And that's common sense too, isn't
That
it?
is common sense, and that's the one thing that Washington completely, common sense completely eludes Washington, D.C.
That was my follow-up question. Earlier you told me that you don't think lawmakers understand how firearms, they just don't even understand firearms in general, and they shouldn't be the ones in charge of how we use them, right?
Well, we've got people making decisions on firearms and on what we should have and what we shouldn't have that not only don't understand firearms, don't own firearms, they come from a completely uninformed position. And I can show you some of those positions that they have passed in the past already that have made absolutely no sense.
Okay. And let's talk about federal laws too. Do you think we need federal law or changes in federal law, or more on the local law?
Oh, I'm completely opposed to federal law, because federal law is dictated by the masses that live on the coast, West Coast, East Coast. What happens in Montana and Wyoming and Missouri and Arkansas, us folks over here in Flyover, we live in a different world, a different society than New York City or LA. I know because I grew up in LA, and it's a different place there than it is here. And for them to regulate and tell us what we need is a bit bogus. I just don't think that's right. I like state regulation. I like state education. I like I like to be able to have somebody 30 miles from me that I can call, go see, and say, I really don't like this particular piece of legislation, and I don't have that ability with a federal regulation.
Let's talk about Chicago a little bit too. They
Okay.
have some of the toughest gun laws in the country,
Yep.
but it's not working.
Never has. It never has. Chicago's got the toughest handgun laws, as far as I know, next to Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. and Chicago both have about the same kind of handgun laws. And the murder with firearms rate in Chicago is, I think it's the highest or in the top 2 or 3 in the country. And they've had regulations, anti-gun regulations, for years and years and years. And that's the problem. The gun regulations regulate the law-abiding and modify behavior of the law-abiding, but they don't have any effect on the non-law-abiding. We already have laws on the books that make it a felony for a felon to carry, a felon that's maybe served time or adjudicated a felon. We already have laws that make him having a firearm of any kind illegal.
Now, you keep talking about felons. What about the mentally ill, too? I mean, are you concerned about somebody that might have some mental disease that comes in and buys a gun from you?
I'm always concerned about that. And the way the regulations work now, when you fill out a federal acquisition form, the acquisition form has a question on it that asks if you've ever been adjudicated mentally defective. And if they answer yes to that, we call that information in to the National Instant Check System, which is NICS, federal operated system. But as I understand it, they don't have any way to keep that person from having a firearm. My personal feelings are that if they have had a mental problem, they probably don't need a firearm. They also may not need a car. Everybody talks about firearms being dangerous. Put somebody behind a 7,000-pound SUV at 50 miles an hour driving across a football field on Friday night, and you've got problems.
And so what do you do? I mean, as far as your sales here and stuff, I mean,
If the
can you say, hey, I don't want to sell you a gun, or can they fight you on that?
Oh, if I see someone that I don't believe should have a firearm, I can refuse to sell them the gun. The problem is I don't have access to their history. The only ones that have access to that is the federal government. And they actually tell us if we can sell a firearm to someone or if we can't. You can have a postponement, which gives the federal government a little bit more time to investigate, or you can have a denial, or you can have a delay or postponement, or you can have a proceed. And any one of those 4 things can happen when we call in that information to the federal government, to the NICS. And we never know until they tell us. If they say proceed, then we're to issue the firearm. And that's all regulated in part of the ATF's regulation of federal firearms dealers. I think that I'm the oldest firearms dealer in Columbia, I believe. We've been in business longer than anybody else here. So.
And have you ever had any, in all those years, have you had any problems with people here in Missouri or not?
Problems with purchasers?
Well, I mean, like somebody went nuts with a gun you bought.
Not that I know of. Yeah. Not that I know of. But a lot of times we would not necessarily know.
Right, that's true too. And okay, let's see. I think we're almost done, unless you want to. Let's see. We never talked about solving the problem. I guess there really is no solution to this problem, though, is there?
Well, I think crimes, people on people crimes, have been going on since cavemen, and I don't see that changing. There's been an awful lot of press about things that make guns look like the enemy. The guns are not the enemy. The people that create the havoc and terror, that is the enemy. Guns are just a tool. And the public is so uninformed about the difference between an automatic, auto-loader. There are all kinds, and those are involved how the action works on the firearm. And I've been trying to educate people, and if some people that hear this want to know more, stop by one of our stores and the guys will stop and show you the difference. We will not have any automatics. We do not sell automatics. You have to be a completely different kind of dealership than we are to sell automatics. And there is a $250 per year tax if you do own an automatic and you're under a very different set of laws. So when people talk about automatic firearms, they really are talking about auto loaders. You have to pull the trigger every time you want to shoot, not something you press the trigger and it just goes, shoots 100 rounds.
And when you say auto loader, what I call that is semi-automatic.
That's exactly right, a semi-automatic. It's now, and some of the best sporting guns that I used, and Remington 1100 is my favorite gun to use. That's a shotgun. That's an auto loader. And I think our biggest concern, me as an individual, as a guy that likes to hunt and likes to shoot skeet, trap, my biggest concern is what they're trying to do is not going to solve the problem. I mean, we can see that this is not going to solve the problem. So it acts as a foothold, and all of a sudden some crazy person goes out and does something really terrible with a shotgun, which in my opinion is a much more effective weapon in the hands of an unskilled person than a rifle. And that person does something terrible, then we're concerned that the national media and the anti-gun folks will take that and use that to take away shotguns or to take away our sporting rifles. And that's our biggest concern. This is about tactical weapons, yes, but it really is about legitimate gun ownership, because I think that this is going to do nothing to solve any problems.
Well said. I'm done, Don, unless there's something else you'd like
Okay,
to
I didn't know if you want to do that.
Yeah, well, I'm going to take the camera off the tripod and I'm just going to have you demonstrate for me.
Okay, all right.
And you leave the microphone on too.
Okay.
You got that in your pocket? The little
I'll get it,
transmitter
yeah.
thing?
What about, did you talk about the difference of somebody coming to your house and if you had that law and you only having this many rounds